Okay, now let's see how I manage to use a microphone in this end. We will see. Okay, so first of all about myself. I do come from Romania originally, and I did study physics at the University of Bucharest. But then, as many physicists changed professions to computers, and was a programmer for a while, and then became a manager, and then a senior manager, and now I am into processes and process improvement and project management and stuff like that. And over the last 7 years, let's say, I became involved with Agile processes, really interested in it and applying it everywhere I could. And we'll talk about that in the presentation. Now, before we start, first of all, do you hear me well? Because I don't have a clear feedback with this microphone. Yes, okay. Then I would like, if you don't mind, to see a raise of hands of people that know enough about Agile that they could explain it to somebody that knows nothing about it. Okay, no, that's good. Because, see, I need that in order to gauge the level of detail that I go into. Then, I would like a raise of hands of the people that have used Agile or think they have used Agile methodologies in their work directly. Aha! Now that's interesting. There are more hands for people that think they have used it and can explain it. That I would have explained it the other way around. Interesting. Okay. Then, just to gauge my audience a bit further, how many of you raise your hands are software developers? Okay. And how many of you are testers? Okay. And how many of you are project managers or executives? Now, has anybody raised their hand or I missed the constituency? I think I missed somebody. Okay. So, let's proceed. So, for myself, again, this Agile New England chapter of ACM. ACM is an association for computing machinery, and it has been in existence in the States for many years. And we have formed about 3 years ago a chapter, a local chapter. It's an Association for Computing Machinery. It's a national organization, and it has chapters in every city, state. So we are one of the chapters in New England, which is Boston, but it's not just Massachusetts, it's Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, so all the states around Massachusetts. And so I'm the vice president of this organization. We have about 800 to 1,000 members. I haven't checked the last figures. And we have about 30 to 50 active volunteers that organize things, and the board of directors of 8 people that manage the whole operation. So here, I understand you don't have such an organization, and Nicolae represents basically the Agile volunteering stuff. So it's a very good thing to have a volunteering organization because it brings people from various walks of life and from various companies, and it facilitates exchanges between companies. So maybe you should join with Nicolae to create a bigger organization instead of volunteer stuff. And at the same time, I am in my day job, director of engineering at Data, and at break I can talk to you about Data, and this is one of the things that we do. Now let's see how we move. Okay, so the first thing is what are the main Agile concepts and how they fit within a startup. So one of the main concepts is increased customer interaction. Instead of doing a product from beginning to end based on some written specifications and then giving it to the customer after, I don't know, 6 months, a year, 2 years, depending on the life cycle, and the customer saying, oops, that's not what I wanted, which is a typical case that we all know about, I think. You all know about it? Hmm? Yeah. Okay. So in this case, in Agile, you do a little bit, and you show it to the customer, you do, and they say, that's not exactly what I have in mind. I thought it should be different. You modify, you add a bit more, you give it to the customer, says, yes, that's what I want. Actually, I want it slightly different. So the requirements evolve at the same time with the product. And then the fit with the customer is good in the end because you keep the customer involved as you go. So with a startup where things are not very well organized and they just start being, this is a perfect fit. Iterative is again, don't do everything up in a big block, but do a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more, and again, that's a perfect fit with a startup. Change is expected and embraced. So in traditional software development, you expect you have some requirements, and then when the customer changes its mind and wants something different, everybody says, oh, again they are changing their mind, and oh, how can I deliver in such conditions? But in reality, you have to expect change because the market changes, and as the product evolves, you see that what you are producing is not what really is needed. So you have to expect change. If you don't see change, then you are not doing something good. So that's also a perfect fit with a startup. And the last but not least is respect for the developer's need for focus. And that's not a good fit. So developers like to get a problem and resolve it, and have at least a few days or a week or 2 weeks to resolve that particular problem without being distracted. Now, in Agile, this is organized with sprints, and I'll talk about it. But in a startup, and specifically in my startup, this is a serious challenge because there are customer issues coming left and right from existing customers. There are market demands, new contracts being signed, and developers derailed and move from project to project. And this is a serious challenge that I face in our shop. Now, what Agile is not, and again the fit is a startup. So Agile is not speed at any cost. The idea is when you hear Agile, you think speed. And executives like the concept because Agile sounds like, speed. It's not. It has to be sustainable, and it has to be done at the normal pace of development. And this is a serious challenge in my startup, and I guess in any startup. There is no lack of architecture. So people, one of the main complaints about Agile is you do a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. What is architecture? You have to do a big architecture up front, and then, in reality, an architecture evolves. So you have to do an architecture up front, but it doesn't have to be huge. You can do a sketch, the skeleton. And then that architecture evolves, and you have to expect it to evolve. So it could be a fit, and depends on the startup, because if the startup doesn't give time for the architecture to evolve and just says, okay, we've done it up front or we don't even need it, then you have a problem. Agile is no lack of planning, because people think, okay, how can you plan? But the idea is you plan at very high level, and you do a big roadmap, or whatever, and then you plan in the short term for your sprint a little bit at a time. And it is a perfectly short term, because then you have to plan your sprint over a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. But for the longer term, it is not very clear, because you have to have bandwidth to assign time to do the planning long term somehow. And Agile is no disorganization and no chaos, because people think Agile, oops, it will be very chaotic. And Agile actually allows startup or groups that otherwise would not be organized to organize. It is a very good method to organize. And we'll see it further. And also, it's no unaccountability. Everybody is accountable. In fact, in Agile, we are more accountable than in traditional methods. Let's see further. Okay, flavors. I don't cover all the flavors that Nikolai mentioned. Hello. You don't cover all the flavors that I don't cover all the flavors that Nikolai mentioned, but I cover these. Scrum, which is most known. I don't know about here, but in the States, Scrum is the one used mostly. And XP programming, extreme programming, which is, as the name says, refers to programming, to software development mostly. TDD, test-driven design, with accent on testing, and we'll have a slide about each of these. Lean development, which, as the name says, is trying to avoid waste. Kanban, which is again a Japanese term, and is just-in-time scheduling. And all these flavors can be mixed and matched, and they are methodologies that can be used together, so that you cannot be pure to use just one, and you don't want to. And I'll talk more about Scrum because this is the one that encompasses the process, the development process. So in Scrum, it's very easy to remember what it is because there are 3 roles, 3 meetings, and 3 artifacts. So the roles are the team, the development and test team. So basically, there is no difference between development and test and technical writer and support. There is one team that they do everything together, so the team. And it's supposed to be self-managed and empowered, so I don't, it's an interesting concept. Then there is a Scrum Master, which is the equivalent of the classical project manager, somebody that helps steer the work along, and if there are impediments, which always are, to help resolve them. And then the product owner, which is the equivalent of the product manager, the person that knows what the customer, one that is in the interface with the customer, that steers the product. And when a developer doesn't know, should I do it this way or that way, because you always have choices as you go through development, the product owner will be able to tell. So the product owner is there, available to the team to resolve design decision during the development. Then the 3 meetings is sprint planning at the beginning of a sprint. And the sprint is at 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever time box period for development, the iteration. So at the beginning of the sprint, there is this sprint planning in which features are decided and estimates are made, and the commitment is made saying we will deliver this in this sprint. And basically, that can be done by teams that know already each other and know what they can do. Initially, you guess, and then you do or you don't do, and then you know next time and next time. So this sprint planning depends very much on team having had a few iterations together. So first time, you just do whatever your best guess, and whatever happens, happens, and then you learn. Then there is a daily stand-up when teams meet daily always at the same time. And for teams that are geographically distributed, and with the outsourcing there is a lot of that, you can have a conference call at a certain hour. It could be the end of the day if you work with India, or it could be, I don't know, if you work with the States, different times. But always it's good to be at the same time. Should be short, not more than 15 minutes, and everybody says what they have done yesterday or today, if it's the end of the day, what they plan to do tomorrow, or whatever, and what are the impediments, if any. So the Scrum Master will try to resolve the impediments, and then everybody knows what everybody else is doing, so they don't step on each other, trying to, because often it happens if people don't communicate that they try to do the same thing. I don't know if you have this experience, but I have. So, and then at the end of the sprint, there is a retrospective in which people talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what we want to keep, what we want to change. And it can be very short, could be 10 minutes, with with a team that is working well together. And then there is a review in which you show the product owner and other interested stakeholders in the company and potentially customers, real customers, what you have done in this iteration. So it's very important in an iteration to do stuff that can be shown, that has, you know, it's an end-to-end development, even if it's small, you add a feature. Because people tend to develop, I don't know, 30 APIs to be used later. So you cannot show everything at the end of the sprint because those APIs cannot be shown. So it's better to do one API and do the input and do the output and show the full flow at the end of the sprint. And then in the next iteration you do 5 more or whatever. And the artifacts are the product backlog, which is the responsibility of the product owner, in which you have the big blocks of functionalities that have to be done over the life of the product, so the product roadmap in a way. Then the sprint backlog, which is the one decided at the beginning of the iteration by the team. And the burn down chart, which shows, you have 2 types of burn down charts, one which shows, or burn up charts, one which shows how you are doing in the iteration, and we'll see one further, or how you are doing with the product, how many features you have done out of the product. Here is an example of a sprint backlog, and I blacked out the text because I just took it from my team, one of my team's real backlog, and I didn't want to show what are the real issues there. So this is done from Jira. Anybody here use Jira? Okay. And mainly with the Agile plugin, the Green Hopper. Anybody use a Green Hopper? Okay, it's a very nice plugin, and basically it allows you to show electronically a task board. So here are the tasks which have been done, and here are the ones which are in progress. And you can see that there are 10 issues, these are Jira issues. They're all scratched, which means they're done. There's no time remaining. In progress, they have 53.5 hours remaining for these 6 issues. And here are to do 9 issues, and with 97 hours. So these are the estimated times that Jira, the Green Hopper plugin allows you to estimate. So at any moment in time you know where you are and how you are progressing. Now, what is the definition of done? Because you have seen that done. So what does done mean? In some concepts, design has to be done. I mean, you cannot, well, some people skip design, but design has to be done, even if in your head. And it's preferable if it's documented. And it's best if it's documented in code, like with comments and with headers of the routines. And do you people know about Doxygen for C++, Java Doc? Yes? I see heads nodding. Okay, good. So that's the best design documentation, because if you do it on paper in a separate document, then as you code, you change things. You cannot do them exactly as you wrote them down. And then how many people go back to update the design document? 0. So, so if you do it in code, then you run your Java doc on your Doxygen and you have your documentation up to speed. Assuming that yes, you did update your comments, but it's easier when you are there to update the comment than to go to a separate document. Then code it, everybody agrees code it has to be done, but it's more than just code it, it's submitted to your source control management system, the version control that you use, because if it's on your machine only, that's not useful to anybody. And also compiling and building. And one of the tools is continuous integration. How many people use continuous integration here? Oh, so nice. Okay. So now, some people say, okay, that's not enough, we have to have unit testing. Now, unit testing is a big controversy. Everybody says it's good, but how many people do it? Anybody here doing unit testing? Oh my God! Oh, how nice! So, unit testing is fantastic because it does put a burden on up front to write the framework, but then as you change the code, you just run it. And then you know you haven't broken anything, or that you have broken something. So, and depending on your language, there are all these frameworks. Now, so some people say, okay, this is nice. And your company, your group has to decide what that is. For me, it's more. Okay, so you'll see. I go all through all this. So, test plans written, and because some testers test without a test plan. Now, initially when you do an exploratory test, yes, you play with it. But if you don't write it, you don't remember. Even in a week after that, you don't remember the steps you did. And try as you may to reproduce that situation which you saw, you can't. And so it's good when you test to write the test plan at the same time. So that's why QA is part of the team, because as soon as a developer finishes developing and says, hey, I've done this part, the tester can test it right then and there. Some people say it's best to have the full software unchanging and then test it. Because as you change, the things will change and what you have tested becomes invalid. Well, there is a point to it. However, a lot of bugs are specific to that particular feature. If you test it right then and there, you find them earlier, they can be fixed, and yes, you'll have to retest it. But the retesting will be quicker because you know what you are doing, and it will pertain only to the interaction with the rest of the software. At least you have cleaned and cleared that particular software. So testing immediately on the heels of the developer is a very good method if the company can afford it. So if you have enough testers to go just a step behind the developers. Then the best thing, if you have test automation. So how many people here use test automation? Oh, so my black t-shirt is not easy. Okay, so I looked at him, I didn't look at the rest. So how many test automation? Still, okay. So
I've tried Selenium. It's okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So test automation is tricky because you have to have the good tool. Your software has to also fit that model. Not every software can, but in many cases you can find the test harness that fits you. And if you have test automation, then you can do regression testing, new iteration much quicker. If you do manual testing, you are doomed. Because as the software grows, every time you get a new iteration out, you have to retest the whole thing and you fall more and more and more behind. It is an investment, but it pays. So, you know, pay me now, pay me later, that's the idea. So, it's not a clear cut. And then another thing is integrated. So, when I say done for that issue, you know, blah, 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 you know, this widget crashed. Okay, fine, you fix it, you test it in your own build, but was it integrated with the rest of the software? And further, were release notes written? Release notes are very important for a company that has already customers, because there is customer support, and there are people calling and wanting to know about what's the situation with my bug. If you don't have release notes written, the poor customer support know nothing and are totally at a loss what to say. So developers writing decent release notes is very important for the company. It's not something that developers like to do. Actually, developers hate to do it. It's maybe sometimes good for testers to write the release notes. That's good too, because they are closer to the end customers. Whoever writes it, they have to be written, and the last step is deployed. In my company, since we have a production they are live, we don't consider a thing done until it is deployed actually on the production system. So in each company you decide what is your level. Like many companies were done, stopped at coded. And then I've been in other where it was tested by QA. So right now I am just deployed. And here is a work down chart. This is an example of a typical sprint, which is not a good sprint. So, but I say typical because, you know, that's what I have. So here, oops. Okay, so here when we started the sprint, we said, okay, we had only these few hours that we said, because we didn't enter, the planning was done poorly. We didn't have all the issues entered. So we said, okay, that's what we have, and this is the time, so that's what we'll take to finish it. However, a few days in the sprint, we added more features because basically they were needed. It was, the planning was not done properly. And that's what, and it happens a lot of times. The yellow line shows the estimate accuracy. That's what you should have had at the beginning. And then the green shows the remaining work. So remaining work was 30 hours, and it was 100 hours, and it was 170 hours. So it kept growing. In blue, you have the effort put in by the team, because every day you say how much work I've done on these issues and the estimate of how much is remaining. Now, the estimate of how much is remaining, you all know, I hope, it's not the difference between the initial estimate and the work done. Because the initial estimate was whatever. I say, I think I will do this in 10 hours. But then, and some people use points, we use hours. But then you work, I don't know, 4 hours on it, and it's done. So basically remaining is 0. Or you work 4 hours on it and you discover that this is a serious problem and it will take you, I don't know, 3 days. So you put 24 hours remaining. So there is no correlation and it goes, you know, it changes every day as you do further development. So this shows you a very bad sprint, but you shouldn't be discouraged if you have a bad sprint because it allows you to see what you are doing practically. And next sprint you do better. So I have a lot of bad sprints, so that's what I'm trying to say here. Now, training and documentation have a big part in the Scrum process. Training, it's absolutely essential so that everybody is on the same page, because if some people believe they are doing this and some people believe they are doing that, and there is no unifying training of the team, you know, in the company, then you don't get anything decent. And that is the responsibility of the executive management to make sure that everybody is on the same page, product owner, team, Scrum Master. Then the requirements documentation. So even though we say this is agile and we don't have those many inches thick requirements documentations, we still need some documentation, and it's better to be written than to be verbal. Because some people swing to the extreme left, from the extreme right to the extreme left, and everything is verbal, and then you cannot check anything. So it is linked to the product backlog. It is the weak point in Agile. It is the responsibility of the product owners. And basically, what we do in Jira, when we put the big blocks, we call them epics, for the requirements, is a description. There is a description. Now, when it comes to breaking it down into features and into software features, the developers, if the product owner hasn't put anything, and product owners are known for being too much involved with the customer, going all the time to see them, and not writing descriptions of the features. It's a perennial fact. I don't know if here it's the same, but for us it is. And then the developers, in my work, write the features and give the description. And if the product owner doesn't like it, tough, he can edit it. But somebody has to take responsibility for And then the architecture and design documentation, it's also very important. And this is very tricky, where you do it, where you keep it, how you keep it alive. It's a continuous effort. So that's the responsibility of the engineering team. The test documentation is also important, like the test plan, the description of the test, and again, where do you keep it? I don't have a recommended place because, you know, with each feature you can put the test for it, but for the product, where do you put it? So this varies company by company. I don't have a proposed simple bullet. And the release notes, they are needed for support and they are needed to the sprint backlog, and they are the responsibility of engineering. So that's it for Scrum. So now let's see extreme programming. So extreme programming, as the name says, the idea is that if something is good, more of it is even better. So let's take it to the extreme. So they do frequent releases in short development cycles. So that's exactly the same as Scrum. Same as Scrum. I did a little acronym here, so I'll repeat it like that. Then, specific to extreme programming is programming in pairs. Has anybody here done extreme programming? Wow! Okay, so I know of people who have done it, but no, I haven't had any team doing it because it's a luxury. You basically use two people to write the same code, and it's extremely good because it gives you redundancy, and if one guy is not there, the other knows what's happening, so you have good coverage. But in a startup, you don't have the people, you can't afford it. So basically, I haven't practically done it. And they say, okay, that if you do extreme programming, the quality of that code is so much better that it's worth the expenditure, the fact that you put two people on it. And you have much less rework and bugs and whatnot. So maybe one day I will get to it, but it's an interesting. Anybody from the audience can comment on the ones that are doing it.
Thank you. So the thing about pair programming is that there were studies done by Laura Williams that if one person takes 10 hours to do, if they work in a pair at 6 hours, so it's not yet a break even, but it's very close, and as I have mentioned, you have far better code quality and the sparks and everything, so it pays off. And in the project I'm coaching right now, it's a large company, we do pair programming exclusively.
And it does take less time for the two people to do the same.
Yes, it takes less time. Because otherwise people also distract themselves. They, oh, I have a hard problem. I check if I got an email. And then they distract themselves, look into that, and then they go back to work and take some time to reimmerse. If you work in pairs, you're always focused.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Then another thing is avoiding programming of features until they're actually needed. And I alluded to that before. So you always have a spread of features that you think will be needed, but don't do them. Do only what you need to show. And then, as the time goes, those that you don't need to show now, you may never need to show later. Like in most programs, in most developed software, only 20% is used, and 80% just sits there and is not used. And programmers and product owners thought it might be useful at some time. And then simplicity and clarity in code, that's very, very important. Programmers especially try to be clever and do clever tricks. And we are very proud of it. That's very bad. The simpler it is, the better. Because even you, it has happened to me. I read my code a year after, and I looked at it and I said, what did I want to say here? What was I doing? So it has to be simple and clear. And this can be used in Scrum as well. And expecting changes in the customer requirement as time passes, it's the same as in Scrum, and the frequent communication among programmers and with the customer is the same as in Scrum. So basically the only special thing in Excel programming is the pairs, and maybe I'll try it now that I hear about this, not quite, but almost half the time. I'll experiment with it. Thank you. Now the test-driven development depends on the application. Not all the application can do it, but the idea is that first you write the test, okay, and you have something already, so you add a test and you run the test and you see that the new one fails because there is no code to respond to it. So you do that. Then you write the code to satisfy the new test and you run the whole thing again and see it succeed. And until it succeeds, you haven't run the proper code. Now, it might be you wrote the bad text, that's possible. So you tinker with box until everything passes. And then, once you do that, you refactor the code, because whatever you write new to satisfy the code might not utilize well the pre-existing software. So once you add a function, you may want to modify existing functions, you may want to refactor them. So refactoring is very important at each step. And then you repeat. Now, if you get an issue later on, you can always revert rather than debug, because you have these checkpoints where everything runs, and once you add a few things and all of a sudden the thing doesn't run, you don't need to debug the whole thing and look for interactions, you revert to a previous one. I am not very, how should I say, convinced that it works. I have not used it. Has anybody here used test-driven development? Okay. So it's a thing that I want to try as well, but I haven't had a chance. Now, lean software development, that's a very good fit in startups, comes from Toyota manufacturing, and basically to eliminate waste, unnecessary code, insufficient tests, slow internal communications, bureaucracy, all these things you want to eliminate. So you amplify the learning by having short feedback cycles. So it's the same as Scrum. You have, you decide as late as possible. In this iterative approach, you have to make a big decision. Where do I need to take this decision now, or can I take it later? You take it as late as possible. You deliver as fast as possible. It's the same as Scrum with the iterative approach. You empower the team instead of micromanaging, because people work best when they are in charge of the decisions. If somebody tells you what to do at each step, then you just sit back and say, okay, whatever. But if you are in charge, hey, then you put all you have in it. And build integrity in with automated test refactoring, and that's very similar with the test-driven development. And see the whole thing, like think big, but act small, and fail fast, and learn rapidly. So basically, you look at the big picture, but you do little by little by little and learn at each step. And use common sense. That's also part of the lean philosophy. And Kanban. Kanban is very much related to lean and just in time. It also comes from Toyota manufacturing, and in Japanese means signboard or billboard. And basically it's a thing used in factories. A question? No. Just stretching? Yeah. Okay. So the idea was that in factories, if one station produces a lot, and the next station cannot consume it, then you have wasted a lot of time and materials producing this stock. And stock, work in progress, is very, very bad because it's resources that are locked in and cannot be sold. So the idea is to have a continuous flow, and everything you produce you sell. So you have to make sure that what you produce at one station can be consumed at the next. So they have a signboard saying, okay, I have 3 things of this. And then the next station pulls them and says, okay, now I can use so many. And this first station doesn't produce more until they can be consumed by the next. And what do you do with those resources? You let them idle and use the people in other stations rather than just use the machines and produce the stuff and have it sit there. So in software, it's the same thing. You do the scheduling of what the people, software people and the testers work on, so that you have a small number of work in progress at any time. So I have seen, and I'm fighting continuously against it, software developers starting a feature, hitting an impediment, and then stopping. Well, they have to stop until the impediment is fixed, and starting a new feature. And then for some reason, even without impediment, this feature, the new feature or issue is related to another one, and they start another one. And you see one person having 4 work in progress things. And that's very, very bad. So the idea is better to finish one, have it tested, and then go to the next one. So complete the test. Don't start something and leave it in progress. And it focused on the workflow, and it's focused on the time and steps to get a work item done end to end. And in Jira, that green hopper is my Kanban signboard, because I see how many things are in progress, and it shows me what developers are assigned of testers to each issue. And if I see somebody having too many tasks at one time, I talk with them and say, hey, what's happening? And now I'm going to tell you a bit about success stories that I have experienced, and then about some failures that I have experienced. So one of the success stories was a medium-sized company, WindRiver, that does embedded operating systems, the VxWorks operating system, you may have heard of it. And I had a small team, it was co-located. The company was not doing and not knowing of Agile at the time, and I just started with a team, didn't even tell them that we are doing Agile, and basically met every day to see what we do, what we did yesterday, what we do today, and what impediments. And that was because we had a project which was in jeopardy, and we saved it, and then everybody liked it. I told them what we have been doing, and then it spread virally through the company. Another company was AgileTour, a startup. It's a software configuration management companies. They sell a product which is like Perforce or Subversion or you name it. And we had 4 teams, and we were geographically distributed all over the world. And basically, we moved the whole company to Agile through a big event of external consultant coming in, giving a training to the whole company. Everybody got enthused. Even marketing started to use it, and the CEO was excited and started to use it for his own business processes. And the whole company changed to become an Agile company. Even on the website of the company it says, use our company for Agile business processes and blah, blah, blah. So it was a big success. I love that. And now I am at this Raw Data, which is another startup, and we have lots of teams. Some between 2 people and 8 people, and we have teams of 1 person. Some are co-located, some are distributed, so I'm using a very flexible approach. Each team is different. It's a very interesting thing, and I've been here only 6 months, so I don't have yet established process, but it is basically we have to use Agile to get it going. And the failure stories. Avaya, which you may have heard, a large telecommunication company, where it was a very strong waterfall and MS project, vast organization, and we were a startup that has been bought by Avaya, and we were part of the big organization now, and we had to follow their process, and we hated it with a passion. And we researched, that was maybe 7 years ago, we researched alternatives, and some people researched RAP, the RPM thing, and some I researched Scrum, and that's when I fell in love with it. And we proposed it to the executives, and they turned it down without blinking. So that was that. And then I was at another company, a medium size, and I tried to introduce Agile, and my direct boss was very sympathetic, but the layers above were not. It was a waterfall mind organization. And even though we tried and we it didn't work. It has to be from the top, otherwise it doesn't work. And I think that's it. Yeah. All right. Questions?
Hi. So, do you think an agile implementation best fits a time and material project where you build a customer as you go along?
Okay. So the question, I met with this situation because the government, the US government, who does big projects, especially in defense, has realized that if they move the way they used to with big requirements and big development cycles, they will lose to the competition. So they have started to use Agile. And how? So they start a feasibility phase, and the first project, gathering of the requirements, they do it on TNM, time and materials, with whatever companies they used to do before. And the understanding is within roughly this time frame, you know, and with this cost, but very rough, will come with a requirement. So they go iterative, step by step with TNM. Yes, it can be used.
So you said at the beginning that in an agile project the architecture should evolve. Well, what if you have a long-running project, for example, a year, and technical debt gathers, so you have to do a big refactoring? Is sprint focused just on refactoring allowed, or does it fit the agile methodology?
Very good question, and a very practical one, and yes it does. So typically people do refactoring a bit at a time as you go, but then you hit a point when enough technical debt, that's the name of the thing, has accumulated that you need to do a big refactoring. And again, depending on your executive team there, if they allow it, but your Scrum Master and product owner should be aligned, yes, to take 1 or 2 sprints to do a big refactoring is essential.
So what do you deliver at the end of the sprint? You
deliver because after you do refactoring in such a way that you can still show your functionality, that it hasn't broken. So you show whatever you had, that it's still there. And that maybe it's faster, you know, because why do you want to do the refactoring? There is something there, like the things have slowed down, or things crash from time to time, you know.
Okay. So you practically show a little bit improved.
Yes, you have to show something.
Have you ever tried this on a fixed price project?
I have not tried on a fixed price project. That's what we had at ASME. And no, on a fixed price project, it's tough. Because there you try to cut costs. Probably it works, but I haven't tried it.
You've already mentioned MS project-based organizations, and this is one of the criteria that apparently hints to agile failing as a methodology. Can you give other examples of hints that suggest that trying agile will fail? I mean, what other criteria are there that suggest that fail isn't that Agile isn't appropriate.
Okay, so the main criteria for success or failure is your executive management buy-in of the Agile methodology. So the Agile methodology basically says the very close contact with the customer. So if you have a customer that is at arm's length and you have a contract negotiation rather than product negotiation, so you have set everything in stone and you know it's very legalese, and you don't talk to each other and you have to deliver this, then Agile will not work. Because in Agile, as you go, you change. Things change in development and you want to show it to the customer for them to react. So anything that is bureaucratic and legalese will not work in Agile.